Hey, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be doing a little bit of refactoring. We are going to be moving some stuff around to kind of clean up how we use our API in the web project. And in order to do that, what our end goal is to fix this bug here. So Google sessions seem to be logging out. See if we can clear user state if we get a 403 returned from the API. So right now, we'll see if we can even, so our app's not even running currently. Let's get our app running. So we get our app running, and let's take a look at the project in general. So let me pull me over here, and we have a couple things that we actually want to clear up today. So we have our task list, and let's just go ahead and look at, well, we can look anywhere where we use the API. Let's go to the container. Is this where we load everything? Yeah. So there's a couple things that we're going to notice in all of our, everywhere that we actually try to, everywhere that we are trying to, how can I say this? Everywhere we try to use the API, we're always having to specify these headers and do stuff like this. And so we want to just get away from having to do this, because now what we're doing is we want to actually handle a 403. And then if we get a 403, we want to do some other action. Well, we're going to have to do that same action everywhere we do the API. So what we actually want to do instead is we want to do something like if we can still reference if we have a token, because if we don't have a token, well, actually, we won't even reference a token. What we will do is we want to have something that's going to be something like this. We're going to do this. We're going to call this our API client, and then we're going to just do something like use API client, right? And so we want this to very simply come back from a call like this. And then we'll actually call it. Now maybe it'll be our context, but this is kind of the goal. We want to like wrap all of our API context that is going to use, it can't be static, it can't just be a static function, because this is going to use state. But this is kind of the goal, and then we'll have something like our API client, hey, hit this URL, and then do a response with it. So that's going to be the goal in today's video. So how are we going to actually do this? We're going to kind of find our way through this, and yeah, this is going to just be a learning video. I'm not really sure on exactly how we're going to do this yet, but we're just going to kind of work on it together, and we'll talk it through, and we'll get it figured out. So let's talk about from a high level. If we go into our app itself, we'll see that we have this auth provider. Oh yeah, I guess we still have some secrets in here that we need to remove. But we have our auth provider, we have our content. Another thing though is we want to actually, we have our auth provider, we want to have potentially an API provider as well. So let's go into our auth provider where this is at, and this is in our auth context. And we're just going to create another thing, and we're actually just going to copy some of this. We're going to call this our API client context. So our API client, so API client context type is, how can we say this? We're not going to take in a token. We're just going to have it return the API client, and the API client is going to be a function. Let's see, do we have to? Yes, we do need this. The API client is going to be the type of fetch, right? That's what we're actually that's what we're going to be doing. So the type of fetch is how we're going to do this. Let's think. They're going to our users are going to, we're going to wrap fetch itself and return that. So does that actually make sense? Users are then just going to call our API client with the same exact variables, except we'll take their props and append the props that we have. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. So, all right, let's go ahead and we'll do API client context. And like I said, we're gonna finagle through this. Maybe we'll end up asking ChatGPT for some help, but I think we can kind of struggle with this a little bit and try to see if we can reason our way through it. We are gonna just have these children because we're gonna pass things down like that. So our client context is here. Our value is, this is where we're going to actually wrap our, this is where we're going to wrap our function. So for now, what we can do is we're gonna just make a value. So our API client is just going to be literally fetch for now. There's really gonna be no differences. And we're gonna say, we'll say API client equals fetch. Okay, so that, and we'll set it up like this. And we need to throw this to the top. Okay, this looks good. And API client provider. And this looks good. Do we have anything that says auth? No. Okay, so we have this context. Does this use state? No, it actually does not use state currently. So we have this context, and now what we're going to do is we're going to throw this at this top level here. So we have an API client provider, and we're wrapping everything with that. Okay, so now within our task list container, what we're going to do is first we're going to take this context and we're going to throw this up here. And for now, we're just going to log out token so it's not being complained about. And we're going to do another context here, and we're going to do API client context. And this is going to use our API client. Now, instead of reloading the tasks, what we're going to do instead is we're going to comment this guy out, and we are going to do basically the same thing as this. So let's uncomment. We're going to take this. We're going to comment this out, and we're going to do API client. Or here we go. Instead of that, we're just going to use literally API client. And so that's that there, just like, so we're going to see if this actually even is working. And then we're going to continue to kind of refactor. So it's expecting this, cannot find L, and that's an O. Why am I blowing me up? So is this complaining here? It's complaining that there's no L. On 23, cannot find name L. Compiling successfully. Let's see if, okay, so there's no actual problems here. So let's go ahead and go, or localhost, here we go. And we see that it's actually working still. And we can tell because if we weren't working, let me pull this over here. If this was not working, so if I just do a task 1, and then we go back to our API and I refresh, we get nothing because that's a 404 and we should see a 404. Yes, so we get nothing. So we know this is actually working. So now what we want to do is we want to actually extract this second argument. So we're going to call API client, which is equal to the type of fetch, except what we want to do is we want to augment this. So what we want to do is we want to have the arguments. So this really is going to be a function that has some arguments. So we're going to say return the results of fetch. We'll say arguments. Actually, what is the top level here of fetch? We could change this around where this is a URL, response init. Yeah, so we can actually still make this return, have the same exact parameters as, so let's come here, we'll come back here. So we can actually take in this same exact arguments and we can see that this still should work for us, right? Okay, because they're still working fine. Now, what we want to do though is if we take this, guy here and we, first we can actually say if no token, simply return. We're not going to do anything if there's no token. Perhaps that doesn't make sense. So this is also an async function. But yeah, if there's no token, then we're going to simply return. And this is interesting because if there's no token, return. Maybe if there's no token, our API client itself should be not defined. Yeah, I think that's actually what we should be doing. If no API, if no token, so token, then you get the API client. So API client, or actually we'll do this. So we have API client and we'll say token, then we get this function or undefined. And that's what we'll do. So API client is provided a value, which type of fetch, return. Okay, we can get rid of this guy here. Okay, so we still have the same. So now what we want to do is this is always going to have this headers, right? So we're always going to have this inserted in every single response, except we're also going to do this. We're also going to go into init.headers and we're going to log those out. If it exists, then we're going to add those. So let's see if this works. So API client cannot invoke an object which is possibly undefined. So what we're going to need to do in our client here is we're going to do is very similar. If no API client, then just go ahead and return. So we see this header. So now we should be able to extract our headers call here. And we know this is working because if I refresh here, so here's our API call. And if we have our API call, so we're putting this here. So now how do we actually, that actually is a really big part of this. And what we can do is now go around everywhere and add in this logic. So we don't actually need this token anymore, I don't believe. So we're saying when we load the tasks, but this is really when our API client changes, then we'll reload the tasks. And do we need this token at all? What is this token for? We're saying not logged in. I mean, I guess I suppose we can still use this on this top level, but we can actually change this around in other places. So let's look at other places that we are, we changed our task list, and we're just gonna go through everything and see. So here's another fetch. So we'll bring this guy in, and as I said before, we can actually do, so this is a put. And so what we were not doing right now was, so yeah, we're actually going to continue doing, this is actually another thing. Everything is going to be a JSON that we are sending up. So I think this is another thing that we can kind of abstract into our API client. So what we'll do is we have our API client, we're going to do API client. We're going to say if not API client, return. This is fine here. Let's go into our API client, and we can actually unwrite all those. Another thing we want to do is do the same init, right? Anything that is being sent for this request, we're also going to just continue to log out. But we also want to always add in this guy here to all of our requests. So we're always going to add that. Let's see if we have any problems. No, we do not. So let's come back. And so this is our API client. We can actually get rid of this headers entirely now. Okay, so that actually is good. It's not good because we haven't tested it. So let's do 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's actually still adding, and even though we're using it like this. And I think this is fine to do as is, but we can actually change, oh, that was only an add before. So what we can do is we need to actually change this format. So let's change, and we'll do 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that's still working here, just like this. Now, are we still using our token here? This is our API clients. We can get rid of our bearer completely. If not API client, go ahead and return. Okay. And now our token is no longer being used, which is great. So let's see if there are any other locations. That's not, no, no, no. Oh, here's another one. So this is all of our task completion stuff. So we can do API client. We'll have to throw this up at the top. I think we can get rid of our token now. And we can get rid of this entirely. API client. Another thing too that we can actually abstract is this environment variable. So that's another thing that we can actually do. So API client, remove all of our body, and if not API client, return. So yeah, I think this is another thing that we can actually do is even take our URL. If we go to our API client here, we can actually take this. So what does this request info look like? It's a request or a string. So what we can actually do is we can do one of these. So we'll do input. Okay. There we go. So we take this input and we append it. So now we are probably going to have some issues because we're appending. If we go back to our task list container, now all of our URLs can be much more simplified. They can all look like that. So that's much simpler. Let's see, where are all our other ones? So it's only things that we've really changed. So task list, this now can just become this, and this can become this. I think that should be good there. Our container, we did. Our add edit dialog, we can actually change this. And this actually is gonna make things a lot simpler overall, which is really good. Task add, remove this here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We can actually get rid of this unused variable. Okay, this is looking good, looking good. In theory, we could actually modify this where this was like post, but I think this method thing is fine. Okay, are there any other locations in which we need to change these around? I think this is a really good refactor though overall for the code. It's gonna remove a lot of duplicate stuff. Okay, so let's come in one more time. Let's try to do a 6, 7, 8. Let's delete 1, 2, 3. Let's change this to 1, 2, 3 now. Yes. Let's save a couple, go back to the previous day, and come back up. Okay, so those look all good. Okay, so now back to our actual problem. So what we wanted to do is, how do we actually handle a 403? So let's actually do that, and let's actually ask ChatGPT. So how to handle 403 error and fetch in TypeScript. Okay, so we have this fetch URL. If response.status is 403, then we're going to do something. So in our API client itself, what we're going to do is we're going to do a response equals 403. And then we are going to, if the response.status, we're going to do an await here. Then we're going to do a logout, else, and then we're going to do a return of, yeah, we'll just return the response. So if response 33, then we're going to do a logout, Google logout, which is going to come from const. Oh, we need a logout function. Not Google logout, it's just logout. So that's, if we get a 403, we're going to just return that, and then we'll return the response. Okay, I think this probably will handle our use case. So how can we actually even simulate what this is going to do? What we can do is very simply go into our index, for our task route. And when we get this on our verify, what we'll do is we're just gonna go ahead and we're just gonna do this. The next time we receive any request, we're just gonna immediately go and return a 403 right away. Property email does not exist on string. A lot of problems, it seems like. Let's see. If we refresh, does it still complain? No, it does not. Okay. Oh, I see. I wonder if it's because we'll just do like something silly like this. I guess it's always evaluating this is true. So let's do something like different. So we can just do like if 2 divided by 2 equals 1. Okay, let me come here. There we go. So we got a 403 and it logged us out immediately. And that's what we want anyways, because that's what we were doing. So let's go ahead and just remove this. We can see that this is actually working as we would want, at least for now. I do think we were getting these 403, these forbidden errors quite frequently. I almost feel like maybe we're not like refreshing the token or something like that. But I think we'll look into that as we use the app more and see like what is the actual frequency of my user being logged out when I don't expect them to be. So let's come to our to-do list and see where we're at. So we are clearing the user state when we are logged out. Let's double check too in our auth context that when we log out, it actually, so log out is setting token back. Perfect. Okay, so that looks good. We can actually cross this off, and it says our last bug is change title of page to building streaks. So right now it says React app. So what we can do is just do a search all. Just do React app. And here we go. We'll just call this building streaks. Let's refresh, and here we go. Perfect. The other interesting thing is we still have this little fave icon. We don't really have one right now. And I guess, guess it's not going to update, but we'll refresh. I don't see it going away. No big deal. Okay, I think that's going to be it for today. The really good news is that we finished all the outstanding bugs that I can think of. So that's really good news. I think what we're going to do next is I think we're going to actually start adding these features now. I want to add this ability for us to monitor production logs and get some type of alerting just so I know if there are actual problems. But I'm not too worried about that yet because we're not using the app. So I think what we can actually start doing instead is we can start working on these features, and when all these features are done, really I can actually just start using this app as is, and then we'll come back in and we'll add this monitoring. The next few videos should be pretty interesting, getting more features built. We'll probably start with adding tests and stuff like that first. I am worried about the design getting really, really ugly, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. We're just going to kind of try to stick on just trying to get features built, and we'll worry about the design after we have the main core items and just see if this app is worthwhile at all. So really enjoyed, hope you enjoyed the video. If you stuck with me this far, well, you might be as crazy as I am. because I know this was a long one about somewhat boring items as well, just refactoring and stuff. But sometimes that's what we do, right? Sometimes it is just about cleanup. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and I will see you in the next video.